Meeting started. Take a look at the minutes from the last meeting of January. Anybody have any comments, corrections, additions, subtractions? If not hearing any, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Okay, from Vince McCardle,
I second.
and a second from Brad. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Minutes are approved as recorded. I'm going to combine the chairman's report and Peter's report into one because it's what we've been working on most diligently for the last couple of weeks, and for this week, continuance. We took we took 31 applications for the position. And at this point have gotten through the first round, if you will, which eliminated 17, 18 applicants. And at this point now, we're interviewing by Zoom the remaining applicants. And I got to share with you that there are some very, very strong candidates. We're going to have a difficult time making a final selection, but something about is unstable, Peter, the internet connection. Oh,
Yeah,
maybe that was on.
It's on your end, but well, I think we got what you said.
Okay, good. All right, Peter, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that was a good summary. To be a little bit more specific, we'll be finishing the interviews this week, and then the search committee will be evaluating the interviews and then narrowing it down. It's unclear to me. I think it will be decided next week once it's decided how many finalists there will be, what the next step will be, if it will be Zoom interviews or in person, and if there will be more members of the board invited to participate. But certainly once the field is narrowed down, if the board would like, all of the interviews are being recorded. So we will be able to share what we know with those of you who are not on the search committee as appropriate.
Yeah, what Peter is doing is after the interview, after the Zoom interview, he's almost instantaneously recording it. So anyone can jump on any of the interviews and see the particular candidate. What we're doing now is pretty much every afternoon too. We have two more scheduled for this afternoon. And in the first round, I think we eliminated 18, Peter, 17 or so, who had some strengths, but there were others much more viable. So that concludes our search for executive committee and the ongoing search. And I particularly want to thank the search committee, Brad and Jim Sullivan and Jim Melantrance and Maston and Vinny and Sue Cleary, who's been very helpful to get their input and then to try to piece together an evaluation of the candidates, which is quite frankly and pleasantly not going to be easy. Okay, let's move on to the budget so that we can see where we are and what we're trying to do. And the numbers are very, very difficult to work with, but we need to come up with something. I'd ask Matthew and Peter to take us through that. What Matthew and Peter sent us was a 3-column projection, actual and a proposed. And this year is still very, very tenuous and very much up in the air. But with that introduction, Matthew and Peter.
Sure. I can start and look to Matthew for details. So yeah, as Tony said, we did this very similarly that we did last year, since it's hard to tell what normal is, what the new normal will be, and what we're aspiring to. I will take a step aside to say, I will blend the executive director report a little bit in here with that because, it's
Please.
appropriate. We just were given the go-ahead to drop the mask and vaccination mandates for audiences. We will still have those in place if artists request, but I'd say 95% of the performances, audiences will no longer need to show proof of vaccination or masks. I mention that because that potentially has an impact on attendance. Whether it's up or down remains to be seen. Although I believe we're just getting the word out now. We just received word at the end of the week, so we're just starting to show by show, once we find out the artist preference, get an idea of how many people still are feeling comfortable in attending, now that they know that there will be unmasked and unvaccinated people in close vicinity. My initial reaction, and again, Matthew, you can help me here because you're keeping your eye on it as well, is for everyone that we lose, we will probably gain, because there's people who are probably not coming because they didn't want to be masked or vaccinated, and then there'll be a few that won't. So I don't know if it's going to make a huge difference, but I think overall, if in fact the pandemic is taking a serious turn, as it seems to be promising to do, that certainly should be really help contribute to rebuilding our audiences back closer to where they were pre-pandemic. And all of that said, that middle column, the actual, I would say actual rounded, just so it's not too confusing, is where we were in our last normal year before the pandemic. So that gives you an idea of where we, and that was a relatively average year. So it wasn't an extraordinarily great or bad year as far as ticket sales and rentals. So you can see what we're projecting between now and the end of March, which is the end of our fiscal year for all of those categories. Then you can see where we were at the end of 1920, and then you can see what we're proposing for 22-23. Generally speaking, we said, okay, given what we know, and we know it's not going to be a turn on the light switch and everything back to normal, let's hope for give or take about 75% of what we had in our last normal year for this year, and kind of meet in the middle with that. So again, not every single category is affected by that, but most of them would be. And you can see that reflected in the proposed numbers. And I don't need to go through them one by one, but I would ask that you have any questions about any specific categories and why the proposed numbers are what they are. And we're open to suggestion. A couple of notes, though, is the SVOG grant, which of course we didn't have in the middle column because that was pre-pandemic. We're realizing the first wave of money fully this year, which is at $900,500, and then there's an additional $455. That was a second grant that we received, that it was determined at the time that we would recognize in the next fiscal year. So that is why those numbers are there. And as I pointed out in my notes, that's the reason that we are where we are today financially, and we're using that money for its intended purpose to make up for the shortfalls of performances, rentals, audiences, earned income that we has been tough to get because of the fewer shows and fewer audiences. So that is definitely lifting us up, and a little bit beyond too. If we can make these numbers work, we will have a little bit of an operating surplus, which we typically would recognize or have in a normal year, maybe not quite to the amount that we have this year, but that you should take into account that when we look at the the bottom line for, and I'm just looking at it on my paper to verify the number, the projected operating surplus of 694 for this year. You have to remember that last year, which isn't on here, we had a loss of Matthew, what, 300,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. So some of that money is making up for that as well. So don't, it's not quite as fat as it looks. And then the other note is the New York State appropriation. Obviously, the budget is not passed yet, but that is the amount that is in the proposed budget. And also the Grand Foundation income, 100,000 of that is also from money that is funneled through the New York State Council on the Arts, but is also being proposed in the governor's budget for the coming year. So as long as that budget passes as currently proposed, those numbers should be solid, which is obviously our base of that we can build. Other than that, the full-time salaries reflect the raises for current staff that was approved to catch us up. We put some of that in retroactively, and then we added another 2% going forward. Other than that, the other numbers are reflective of that idea of the 75%, probably with the exception of the artist fees. What I have been finding is as much as the pandemic seemed to affect the whole business as far as, wow, we're all in this together and, we need to be really creative now to get audiences back. The agents are still asking for top dollar and actually more. So my anticipation is that we are going to be paying more for artist fees for similar shows than we had in the past, for that caliber anyway. And again, obviously a lot of this depends on what's booked, because we really haven't booked anything for next year. There's a few postponed shows, so this is all, conjecture at this point. But the ratio between the artist fees and the ticket revenue is a little bit skewed from what it usually is. And you'll notice that, for example, we pay 600,000 in artist fees. We're expecting 700,000 in revenue, as opposed to spending 600 in the last good year and making 900. So you can see there's a little difference there, but trying to put a dose of reality in there based on our experience since we came back from COVID, and not saddle the organization with expectations that may not really be practical. But then again, who knows? We'll find out as we go, as always, and find out what the actuals are. So there's my summary. I'd look to Matthew for any detail that I likely missed, or any comments on.
No, you hit the artist fee, which was my one question, or my one concern that needed to be explained. But everything else, yeah, good.
I apologize. I'm going to have to jump for a work issue that's just come up. So, but
Absolutely.
this
John,
all
thank you
sounds
so
good.
much. All right, thank you so
Thank
very
you.
much for your time.
Peter and Matt, just was curious about, do you have any feedback from the performers on, are they okay with masks, no masks? Have you had any feedback from them on that side?
Yeah, like I said, we've contacted everyone. We've heard back from almost everybody who's scheduled from now through June. There is only one artist who is still asking that the audience be vaccinated and masked.
Oh.
There's one that is asking the audience just to be masked, and there's one asking for the audience just to be vaccinated, I think. Everybody else is fine without going maskless and vaccinationless. And but a lot of them still are asking that the backstage crew remain vaccinated and masked, as they're working in close proximity with their touring companies and artists. And which I think is good from my personal perspective, for them and also for our staff, because these artists are going from place to place. Although the country is starting to look pretty, well, I read the New York Times, so pretty yellow as far as the risk factor. There's a few dark oranges out there, but anyway, what I'm trying to say is that they're going places that they may be exposed to different levels of COVID still. So at least I think for protection back there, and they're working, hand in hand, almost literally. So.
Yeah, and
but
the audience,
Yeah.
obviously, they can wear a mask if they want.
Oh, yeah. Oh, certainly elected. It's an elective.
Yeah.
People are, obviously, I mean, we don't, that really goes without saying. And again, I haven't seen a lot of return requests now that we have announced that. And I think overall, everywhere, whether it's performing arts centers or movies or stores or what have you, people are now saying masks are not needed anymore. So, it's not any big news. And really, it's probably 2 weeks before that, a lot of venues had already abandoned the requirements, and we just wanted to wait until we got the official word from OGS and the governor's office before we lifted anything. So, yeah, hopefully that answered your question. And I expect that, the few holdouts, and it's fine, we left it as, hey, let's keep it on for now. Obviously, the master vaccinations are the ones who wanted it. And they may in 2 weeks say, man, this is over. Let's do it. But again, we'll respect whatever the artist requests.
On the budget, I just, I think it was a good budget you put forward. I mean, no doubt, but I just hope we can hit the 75%, that you kind of project. And geez, I hope the audience comes back in a year over this next year, right? Because if they don't next year, where it's going to be, we'll have used up the grant and our fund surplus really, and it's just a tenuous time. That's all. Just
Yeah.
we
Well,
have to
I
make
should
this
say
work,
too, and this segues a little bit into Tony's report too. And we're explaining to the candidates, if they ask, which most of them do, where we are. And we're explaining that, for our own presenting, that we are withholding, submitting any offers at this point. So that said, if the organization, says, let's continue our wait and see attitude, and not go forward until we're more confident with the audience return, that will affect those potential losses that you're concerned about, which is a good concern. I think that just as important is the return, or really more important in many ways, is the return of rental income, because the rental income, is so down from what it usually is, not so much from the performance rental side, the commercial promoters with the comedy events and the tribute bands that we all know have talked about. But the other things, for example, June typically, we probably have maybe, 15 to 20 days, and no exaggeration, of rental dates between graduations and dance recitals that have gone away for a couple of days. And this is our bread and butter and really, really fuel the fire, as well as, any corporate meetings and the fundraising events and all of those things that, completely vanished and we haven't had for 2 years. They're all coming back. We actually have our first major conference starting April 1st, New York State United Teachers Association, which is kind of a Empire State Plaza wide convention meeting.
Let me jump in here, Peter. I thought we had some issues with the teachers still. They weren't happy with our requirements for masks and vaccinations.
They were not happy with our requirements, but now the requirements have lifted and they're happy.
Oh, good, because that's a large meeting. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we weren't, and again, my conversations with them, just they weren't going to back out. They were concerned about how it would be facilitated, and I assured them that we had been checking vaccinations and masks, and we had a way of doing it, and and bringing 2 audiences in on one night without a lot of fanfare. But but at the end of the day, they just as soon not bother with it. As others do. Yeah.
good. I don't want to leave. I don't want to lose the teachers. That's a big event.
Yeah, it is, and it's, again, it was a multi-year event that we're doing between the Capitol Center and the Empire State Plaza Convention Center and the Egg. So, yeah, so all of that's coming back. All of the dance schools are like dancing again and happy and confirming their dates. Because it was tough for them because not that they were necessarily opposed to the requirements, it's just difficult because, children under 5, there was no vaccination for, and then families, and you can see the rest. So if this trend continues, when that rental income comes back, again, that's risk-free for us. So that will really hold us up a lot. As you can see, our projected, for this year is 90,000. The year before, 2 years before, was over 200,000. And we're really projecting 150,000, but that could actually be more than that if everybody comes back and the performance rentals keep going on the upswing as they are, because we're Comedy Central now. I mean, every day they're not every day, quite often we're confirming another comedy show, and a lot of times 2 in one night or 2 days in a row. So they're really seeing this as a place for that and different issue to discuss. But it's, like I said, uncontested income. So I would definitely be concerned going forward. But I think all signs are pointing to we should be okay.
Well, perhaps we could look at maybe passing a working budget to be reconsidered in May, at the May meeting. And subsequent meetings as we're moving through the year, rather than saying, this is the formal number and it ain't never going to change, because hopefully it will change. What do you think, Peter?
That's really up to the board. I mean, I think that, we know best projections, what it's going to cost us to operate in the next year. And here's our plan to fund that. I think it's practical. And I think that, if there was a concern that we're not going to make the income numbers, they're not to get too overconfident, but even if that were to be the case, there's over, still $124,000 operating surplus thanks to the SVOG grant in there. And that is a good percentage of our budget. I mean, if you look at the couple of bad years that we've had because of COVID, and we lost, operating wise, $300,000. Then if we can get back to 50% of that, even, we'll be good, and that will make up the rest. So I don't think it can hurt to take a look and see if anything major has changed, and the board can always say, we'd like to revisit. We did that last year, and we can certainly do it this year, but, I would go forward and recommend, considering this budget, and can always reconsider if appropriate.
I think we should keep our eyes on the numbers as we're moving through the year, and not say, okay, it's all over, when it's really only March and it's not even started. So I think what I'd like to do is to move this budget.
Tony, I have a quick question on the
Oh,
budget. if you
sorry,
don't mind.
Brad. Yeah. Okay, please. Sorry. Yes.
Just on page 3, maybe Peter and Matthew can, on G, general and administrative, looks like that's up more than 20% of, our last full year. Just curious as to how you arrived. Is that just general inflationary costs? And are we building in a little cushion for ourselves, maybe there by taking a very conservative view of those expenses, so that if we, if they end up not being that high, we've built a cushion for ourselves?
Correct. We can certainly go through them one by one. I'll try to look at the.
I mean, they look like they're all up, except for.
Yeah, they're all up. Again, I was, in doing so, I was trying to consider inflation, which I think is real.
Yep.
So I think everything is just going to cost more than it does, and I'd rather budget high and come in under than the other, as you all know.
Okay.
So looking at that again, and then again, going from, assuming, the postage is going to go up, that office supplies will go up. The service contracts are in there as a little bit of a cushion for the transition period. as far as bringing in some private contractors to do some of the executive director work, which we're currently doing. So if that needs to lead into the next year, that's built in there. Again, credit card charges. The reason that is a lot higher is because we're finding that ticket prices are getting a lot higher as well. So the percentage of that is going to be up again, just trying to, if it was $69,000 3 years ago, wow, it's probably a lot more. And obviously this year was 52,000, but we didn't sell too many tickets. So, so anyway, yeah, other than that, we just really high between inflation and ticket price increase.
Great. Just wanted to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Michael, do you have any questions about the budget or numbers or anything? Oh, okay.
I do not.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right, then I'd like to make a motion that we approve this budget and reconsider and take another look at the numbers in May and also subsequent meetings as we're proceeding during the year to make adjustments as they seem appropriate and keep our fingers crossed that the division of budget with our appropriation and the other grant money stays in place. That's wonderful. We really need all of that. Yes, Brad.
So moved.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Okay, Jim Lantis, any comments, any questions, anything else to raise? All right, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it's passed unanimously. I think, Peter, that should conclude our meeting unless anyone else has any other issues. We do have 2 more interviews, Zoom interviews this afternoon, Brad and Jim, and I'm looking forward to them. We have some very strong applicants, as I mentioned, and I'm very encouraged by that. Oh, I do have a comment to make about Mr. Vincent McArdle, who has completed Jacob. And we're also very proud of him because I tried to get Jacob March 10. I thought I was signed up and then I got schnookered. Something happened. We are required to do the Jacob ethics. And as Mr. McArdle points out, having completed that course, he may not be able to associate with some of us for whatever he was instructed to do.
They sent me 2 notices today by email telling me that I completed the course, and they sent me another notice saying that I had to complete it.
Okay.
Yeah, that was funny. I got that yesterday. I had completed it.
Same
I have
here.
my certificate of completion. And then I got an email yesterday saying I didn't complete it. And then like 10 minutes later, I got an email saying I completed it. So I was like, oh, good.
Okay, for whatever it's worth, we're Jacob responsible. So if you get an email, please respond and don't act with an attitude that I guess they got hacked or something happened over there, or it's, they're trying their best and we are required to complete the ethics training. So we should complete it. With that, I would like to end the meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Anyone? So moved, Brad, second.
Second.
Okay. Any comments, discussions, anything else to raise? Hearing nothing, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so very much, and we'll look forward to seeing some of you later this afternoon.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.